Hello, welcome to episode 22, season 0, still on season 0. And we're going to be skipping a little bit ahead. So the previous episode was titled Game Dev Lesson 000, but today's title will be Game Dev Lesson 003, because we're jumping ahead with the code that I've been working on since then. Most of the code is in place. Still have a lot of, it's still not perfect. Still have I would say 25-30% more to do. To make the code workable. Make it workable. But I think most of the code is there. Also, the code again is made of was taken from Mr. Christian Thompson's YouTube channel, but I have to add in a lot of modifications because Mr. Christian Thompson, he is coding. I believe he's coding. Yeah, he's coding primarily on a Mac laptop or desktop, Mac OS, and he's coding programs, Python code that runs on a Mac with where the Python interpreter is installed on the Mac laptop. But what I'm trying to do is, if we look at the screen, right? If we follow my mouse, right? My pointer, right? This is a web page. Trinket code, right? You see my mouse, my hand, Trinket. This is, if we go into the URL address bar, it's trinket.io. This is not installed on my laptop. This is a web page. This is a web browser. Specifically, it's the Chrome web browser, Google's Chrome web browser. So the idea is that my students will do game development in Python, but the code will live in a web page that they can share. They can generate links, shareable links, and then whoever gets the link will be able to play a simple 2D game. And the target machine is not a desktop or laptop. It's actually going to be, although they could play on a desktop or laptop, but the idea is that they will be able to play a simple 2D game on their smartphone. And it doesn't have to be the latest and greatest smartphone because the games don't really do that much. So I'll demonstrate. So on the left side is a Python code, right here, the left side here. And then on the right side is what more or less someone with a smartphone will see on their screen. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover the whole screen. It'll be a square right now. So I'm going to work on that. But let's say it's a square. Okay, and so if you follow my mouse, my pointer, so I've coded a plus, a button, game button, which is a plus symbol, and then on the left and on the right I have a red button with a minus sign. So hopefully that's relatively intuitive. So right now the game is still in progress, but I made the speed 0. So if I click on I'm going to click on the plus button, and then I have my little player. Its speed is now set to 0, so that's pretty slow. Now this little red dot, if you follow my mouse, this little red dot is the goal. So every time we collide with the red dot, it disappears, and it says that we've gained 5 points, and then it'll move to another random location somewhere in this area over here, inside the borders. Now, if I hit the minus button, if I click on the minus button or tap on the minus button, if you have a smartphone, speed is set to, it was 1, now it became 0. I decreased it to 0, and so it just stops. So I just have to keep it going. Now, if I want to change the direction of the player object, which is the triangle, I just click on the screen area, right? I just click on the screen area, and then it just heads toward where I clicked. So then that changes the direction. Okay, what is not done yet is need to put if you follow my mouse, I'm going to put a score, I think either here or I'll put a score over here, where every time I collide with the little red dot, which is the goal, then there's a score will update either here or on top over here. I haven't decided yet. So that's what I need to work on. Now the collision detection for the player object and the goals, that has already been coded. I'm going to put that into the form of a function, so it's not in a nice neat function yet. So I'm going to do that. It's going to be called isCollision, which just kind of follows what Mr. Christian Thompson was doing with his videos. So eventually he codes an isCollision function. And we already have, now these buttons are not what he coded. I coded these buttons. Because in his code, it was all key commands. So it was like the up arrow, down arrow, left and right arrow keys. So, but the target device is going to be a smartphone, not a laptop or desktop. So I need to add more code to take into the account. Now the border detection, the collision with the border is already working, although there are some glitches. So my students yesterday noticed that there were some glitches. So it is possible to get the triangle, the player object, the triangle, to escape out of the borders. But normally that wouldn't happen, but it is possible. So they kind of play tested it for me. Okay, so if I hit the plus button, it goes faster. And then again, I can slow it down and stop the speed. Okay, let's look at if we look at the code pane on the left side. Okay, so again, the mouse and the touchscreen inputs have been done, drawing the border and making sure that the border detection is working. Okay, collision checking, collision detection. Okay, that code is already there, just needs to be put into the form of a function. Okay, and then of course I have all the code for play buttons, the game buttons, so I can just copy and paste and then, make more game buttons on the screen. Okay. Okay, if we look at lines 26, 28, and 30, so you can see I'm using the turtle, I'm using the modules turtle, math, and random. Okay. If we look at line 34, we can see that I create a screen object, and it's called WN. Okay, I have a pen 0 object, which is a turtle object, not a screen object. And I'm going to use that. I use that to draw the border and to do the score and also create the game buttons. Okay, here we see what I've highlighted. That's the code that draws the border. Okay. Okay, now here, this block of code draws the increase. It is that code that corresponds, that generates the green button with the red plus symbol. So that's what speeds up the player object. And then this is just the code which is very similar to the the green plus button. The red minus button is this code. And basically this is the code that generates that corresponds to the minus red button that slows down and can actually make the player object go in reverse. Okay, lines 86, 88, 90, and 92, that is the turtle. I mean, that's the player object, the triangle. Okay, and now we have next week, I'm going to be creating actually a whole bunch of goals, so they'll be in the form of a list. But right now we only have one goal, which is a turtle object. It's red. It's a red circle, basically, right? And then here we can see that I put it at the beginning of when the game starts. In the beginning, it'll be randomly put into somewhere in this area. If you follow my mouse, right, somewhere in this area. Okay, goal 0. And there'll be more goals. So the idea is to have more than one goal. Okay. Now just keep in mind that with the turtle module, there's a turtle class, and if it hasn't, with the turtle class, when you create a turtle object from the turtle class, you do get a speed method. And I might change this variable name. If we look at line 114, so there is a speed variable, which has nothing to do with the speed method. There's nothing, they're totally separate things. So there's a speed variable and then there's a speed method. Okay. Okay, I'm defining the increased speed function here, which all it does is just increment speed by 1. And then corresponding, we have the decrease speed function, which all it does, the reverse of the increased speed, it decrements the speed variable by 1. Okay. And okay. Now, if we look at the on-screen click function, which I created, that doesn't come, that was not coded by Mr. Christian Thompson. That taking it from the name of the function I took from example Python turtle code from the Trinket.io had already on their website as an example. So I just kind of repurposed, so I took the name, but then I added all this other stuff, right? So basically, so here, if we look at the main game loop, while the main game loop is running, because the while loop is infinite while loop, but when it's running, every time there's a click on the screen area, on click, right? The on click method. So I have the on click method checking to see if there's a click on the screen area. There's a click on the screen area here. And then when there is a click, then it passes to the on_screen_click function, which I defined. So then it gets passed an X and Y coordinate here, right? Highlighted here, right? It gets passed an X and Y coordinate. So depending on the X and Y coordinate, it's an if, elif, else statement here. So the first thing is checking to see, did I click in the area that is more or less generally where the red button is, the red button with the minus symbol. So it checks for that. So if the user is clicked on the red button, should be clicking on the minus symbol, right? Then we call the decrease speed function. Okay, if this X and Y coordinate is not in that area, then it checks to see, did I click on the green button, specifically the plus symbol, right? Did I click on the plus symbol, plus button? If I clicked on that, then I'm going to increment the speed. So it's going to, the triangle, the player object, the triangle is going to move. The speed will increase, so it's going to move faster going, wherever it is going forward, right? Now, if the X and Y if it doesn't satisfy, if it's not if the first if or the elif, then it checks to see, then it's more than likely I clicked in an XY coordinate where I want to change, where I want the player to actually head towards. Okay, so that's done in, it's coded in 2 lines of code here, this code block, lines 46, 146, 147. It doesn't need to be that way. I could have made it 1 line of code, but just for pedagogical reasons so that my students can understand what's going on. So I broke it up. So I need to first figure out what is the angle I need to turn, the player object needs to turn so that it's actually going towards the X and Y coordinate that I clicked. Okay. So in order to figure that out, I need to call the towards method, right? I need to call the towards method. So in relation to the player object, given the X and Y coordinate that was clicked, it's this method will return the angle that the player needs to turn so that I'm facing towards wherever this X and Y coordinate is, where that point is. So then once you have this angle towards the angle, the degree, right? The number of degrees, now I can call the set heading method. And what that'll do is once you give it the angle, then the heading will adjust to that. So then the player object will now then point towards wherever it is that I clicked, the X and Y coordinate. And then that would assume that then it would be generally going towards that location. Okay, so in the main game loop, we have these 2 lines of code, and basically these do to make sure that the player doesn't go past the boundary, the border. And basically, if it's near the boundary border, then it just has the player reverse direction. So it looks like it's bouncing off of the border. Now, lines 169 and this if statement. This is the collision detection. It's a collision detection between the player and the goal 0, the red dot, the square, the triangle, and the red dot. So this I'm going to put into a function. So this is I don't want to waste too much time explaining this, but basically it uses the Pythagorean theorem to determine what is the distance between the 2 objects, the player object and the goal 0 object. And if the distance between those is less than 20, that means they're about to collide, or they are colliding, or they are about to collide, or they have collided. And then at that point, if we look at the if statement here, the if block of code that's inside the if statement, indented inside the if statement, just basically has it'll have over it. I write out the +5 score that allegedly that you scored, and then it randomly moves the ball to a different location inside the square. And yeah, just as a last note, I need to create a score function, some kind of update score function. It turns out that actually you cannot undo in Python. You can't use the undo with inside Trinket.io. For some reason, doesn't work that way. So I have to I figured out a workaround, and then next week I'll show you what the workaround is. Okay, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Take care, stay healthy. Bye-bye.